talking about the Maryland's natural treasures. Yeah, here we go. Before I start, I think I saw Charlie pop in earlier. This talk is a lot of information from Charlie Davis, so I need to acknowledge his knowledge. He is the botany curator for the society and also the official historian. Charlie's a wealth of knowledge about the natural world and the society, and he's always very generous sharing that information. So I'm happy to take that knowledge and pass it on to you. Keep these stories alive. My connection to Natural History Society, I've been a member for about 14 years or so. I did some odd jobs with the society for a while. I was a board member. My husband, Jim Young, is one of the insect curators. And I'm hoping now that I have a little bit more free time to be dedicated to be the historian in training. I also want to acknowledge Evergreen Museum, their newer exhibit, Leave No Trace, John Work Garrett in the American Outdoors, opened this fall, goes through June. So if you are in the Baltimore area, I really encourage you to visit the exhibit. This talk that I'm giving tonight was first developed in conjunction with the opening night for that exhibit. It really is an interesting way of seeing how people view the outdoors, outdoor recreation, or how we interact with the natural world. So tonight, there's my little breadcrumb. My story within a story. Tonight, I'm pretty sure I'm preaching to the choir, but I will remind you of the importance of natural history collections. Give a quick 200-year overview of how what natural history was like in the Baltimore area, and how that then set the stage for the development of the Natural History Society of Maryland, NHSM. We might not look it, but we are almost 100 years old, so it's very exciting. And I want to end talking about natural history collections. As you'll see, you probably already know the collections are so valuable, but there's also parts, there's stories behind the collections, and the people who made the collections are sometimes just as important as the objects themselves. So that's an overview. So why are natural history collections so important? I'll leave you hanging. I'm sorry. They reflect the nature in your neighborhoods. So whether you live in the city, in the countryside, or anywhere in between, natural history can be found in the plants, the animals, minerals. That's the unique. They're all unique to the place where you are living, and there's so much that you can learn from for just making personal observations of the nature around you. And when you make a collection of that, in a natural history collection, it kind of preserves that important information. Natural history collections document Maryland's biodiversity. So the society is really fortunate to be kind of the custodians of these older collections, and they have value because they capture science from and information from back in time. So when they were compiling the first inventory of what birds are found in Maryland, the reference species that they used to calculate, to figure that out, we have those birds, and so that that's a very important piece of information that we preserve. I like to kind of think of natural history collections as like a time machine. There's time travel in both directions. And so there's a lot you can learn from the past. And when you have information from multiple points in time, then you can compare biodiversity. And so you probably are aware, the society always has a really strong interest in herpetology. And herpetology is the study of reptiles and amphibians, so snakes, frogs, salamanders, all those things. And so because we did a survey in the 1970s and then kind of reproduced it about 10 years ago, there's this great resource now, the Maryland Amphibian and Reptile Atlas, that using natural history collections and, citizen observations, we can say, these are the animals that live in Maryland, and, how they're distributed and how it's changed over time. That's really valuable. Again, good time travel also goes to the future. So, this is the wavy leaf basket grass is a great example of how someone noticed something, someone preserved a plant specimen that now is super informative. So back in the late 1990s, at Patapsco Valley Park in Baltimore, hopefully I'm telling the story correctly, but someone noticed that something was different, that this grass didn't quite look like the other vegetation in the area. So they did, what a botanist does when they want to identify a plant, they responsibly collect it, dry it, preserve it, so you can identify it. That herbarium specimen then became the first record of wavy leaf basket grass, which fast forward to current times is a real big invasive problem in our natural areas. So this is a picture of what the understory in part of Gunpowder Falls State Park looks like with that species. So natural history collections, super important. And I could keep going on all the other reasons why they have significant value. And, so as I go throughout the presentation, you'll understand why I'm really just like overemphasizing the value of natural history collections. So back to history lesson, about kind of how, how do people interact, or how do people learn about natural history in Baltimore through time. So back as, we were becoming and growing as a country, different areas, different cities were growing, and there were certain like hot spots for natural history. The one closest to Baltimore was Philadelphia, where I guess our friend Charles Wilson Peale, who, if you're lucky, can meet him in March. He had a museum in Philadelphia, and there was also the Academy of Natural Sciences of Philadelphia. So those are two, like, kind of like the typical natural history museums. Peale did have a connection. I think he originally was from Maryland, and his son Rembrandt Peale later in the 1800s opened his own museum. It was the Baltimore Museum and Gallery of Fine Arts. I really love this advertisement because I really think I love this, like, it really embraces the curiosity of natural history. So, wild beasts will teach thee, admit the bearer to Peale's museum containing the wonderful works of nature and curious works of art. The Peale still exists in Baltimore. It's now known as the Peale Baltimore's Community Museum, and I'm sure that there's still some natural history, some kind of natural collections, but it's not the emphasis. That's not like the only thing they have. 1846 was a big year for natural history in this region because the Smithsonian was established, and this is just to kind of give us kind of a context of, so now as of the mid 1800s, there's the Smithsonian about 50 miles away from Baltimore. Philadelphia is about 100 miles in the other direction. So we're kind of in the middle between these two big hot spots, these two, lots of research, lots of, natural history is happening around us. It's just important to keep in mind. And there were also local science institutions. So there was, it kind of changed throughout the 1800s, but the Maryland Academy of Sciences became kind of like your typical science institution where they had collections and they had a reference library. But over time, those collections started to go to different places. There was some restructuring. What we know as the Maryland Academy of Sciences went on to be, it still exists, and they are affiliated with the Maryland Science Center, which is obviously a super important part of, Baltimore culture and science learning. The difference being, rather than the traditional natural history collections, they kind of were leaning more towards technology and applied science. So, there was overlap, but there was differences. And so that really sets the stage for the formation of the Natural History Society of Maryland. We were formed on March 25th, which is Maryland Day, in 1929. And it really grew out of that division where we had this, this Academy of Sciences, all these great minds, like mostly at the time it was, men only in the academy, um, you know, and they wanted to go more towards technology. And there was this core group of people that wanted to that saw the value in natural history. And so I think it was about 7 or 8 men split off and formed the Natural History Society of Maryland. If you were paying attention to the poll, you know that would be within, about less than 10 years later, women were allowed to become members. So they came to their senses pretty soon. And I just wanted to talk about, one of those founders was our president, Doc Flading. He obviously was really part of the academy. He was their treasurer and the curator of their entomology department, but had to form this new organization because the academy was no longer serving them. He was really the driving force of the society. He was the first president and he served until he passed away. So it was almost 30 years that he kept the society going and really innovating. So the society was founded to increase and diffuse knowledge of natural history. We had 13 departments, including publications. I do a lot of social media for my work, and I just am in awe of this. Someone drew this beautiful, this is from the 10th anniversary of bulletin. So someone drew all the different aspects of natural history, kind of like my little slide earlier on, but I think it's a really great overview of what natural history is. And I want to also show this slide, the 13 departments. So if you can imagine 13 departments of collections, that's a lot of stuff. And so the society, the headquarters has always been a really important place for the society because we needed storage for all these things. But we also had, education's always been really important. So we needed a place for lectures, workshops, and also a meeting place because the society is a member society, and the socialization and the sharing of information has always been central to the society. We moved around several times throughout the years within Baltimore City. And then the most recent move was in 2006 when we moved to the current location in Baltimore County, Bel Air Road, and Overly. So again, that's a lot of stuff to keep moving around, but everyone understood the importance of what those items were. So so what did the society do? There's a lot of, I think we still are doing a lot of the similar things, but what was really key in terms of programming was this summer nature study, which is pretty much like a free, at least in the beginning, in the 30s and 40s, it was free. It was free summer camp for teenagers to learn about all different aspects of, the nature in Baltimore City, make wildlife observations, drawings, all the things that you would associate probably with a more of a modern day, a nature center and that kind of summer camp outdoor experience. This is just one example of a lot of cool articles in the Baltimore Sun. Baltimore households with strange borders. It's sensational, but it's also, I think, a really good testament to the influence of the society. So this is a story that focused on the, different children in the area and the snakes, their snake collections, and the different, jar of frogs, and how the society was teaching them about nature. And so I give the example of Dr. Jerry Hardy Jr. as I think he's one of probably many people that kind of benefited from the society. The society has always been about sharing knowledge and training the next generation of scientists. And what I could piece together about his history, it's really obvious how the society influenced him. He attended one of those nature camps, I'm guessing in the late 30s, early 40s, and then went to college. He went to college, but he went on these expeditions, apparently battling armies of Cuban ants. Sounds like fun. And then he became an expert. He became a marine biologist, herpetologist, in the tropics. This picture shows him in front. I think this is the University of Maryland in the Mansuetti Laboratory, which is a name that's affiliated with the society of Romeo Mansuetti. So there's just a lot of like pride in like teaching the next generation. The society also had fun. It went on fun field trips. If you're not familiar, Calvert Cliffs is in southern Maryland on the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay, and it's known for fossils. So obviously it was newsworthy, just how we're talking about the Banner article about the mammoth. We were in the Baltimore Sun, 6 scientists hunting fossils. We went out there. We would come, our members would come back, take whatever, do whatever techniques and processes to preserve what they found in the field. And then the really showy things like this whale skull would be put on display in the library or the art museum, getting it out there for people to be inspired by Maryland's nature. And finally, we did for a small, for several decades. And if you grew up, cool skull still on display. If you grew up in Baltimore, you might remember there was a small natural history museum at the Maryland House, which is in Druid Hill Park, which is now part of the Maryland Zoo. And it was your typical, from what there's a drawing of it, typical, exhibits of all the different, wildlife habitats and indigenous culture, native artifacts. And one of the big show pieces that we no longer have because we didn't have storage for it, there was a whale skeleton from the late 1800s that's in that picture where it was like, when you first came into the museum, you saw this huge whale. But because when we had to move out of the Maryland House and we didn't have room, I believe that whale went to North Carolina. So the whale has its own story, but cool. But yeah, let's get the whale back. So having a natural history museum has always been a goal of the society, and we did have for a bit of time. And so I'm going to go a little bit into some examples of the people behind our collections. And the idea of natural history collections as being a naturalist legacy. It's what they leave behind, and lots of really interesting stories. So Dr. Howard Kelly, he was one of the 4 founding surgeons of Johns Hopkins Hospital. That certainly was a fact I had to share when I was at Evergreen Museum. So, he was a prestigious man, well-respected, but he also had hobbies, and I think snakes, raising snakes was, snakes were his thing, one of several different natural interests he had. He was an honorary society curator of the herpetology department, and he also wrote a book, Snakes of Maryland. And of interest to, our collections, we have some of tree snails that he collected in Florida. So, he went on travels and, like most of us, curious about the nature and the places that we visit. These are really important because these populations no longer exist because of habitat loss and over collecting. If I understand the tree snails, I believe it's one species, but they have this really, because they grow in these really, snails don't go very far. And, so each tree is almost like its own unique habitat for the snails. And so they develop slightly different over time. So they have a really rich variety of patterns. And that's captured in the collection that we take care of at the Natural History Society. But you don't have to be a prestigious doctor to have an amazing collection. And that's the story of Bob Bryant. He just really liked butterflies and moths. He lived in Baltimore City. This photo is from the Baltimore Sun, and it's really impressive on multiple levels. He converted his screened-in porch into a laboratory. So he was growing what a lot of us now do at home. I know with the Lep Club, growing like silk moths and Luna moths and raising monarchs. But he did it on a large scale, raising caterpillars to the adult stage, which is really impressive that someone would dedicate space in their house to do that. But what I think is also really impressive is that there's like a really deep knowledge behind that, because in order to grow a caterpillar into an adult, you need to know what plants it prefers to eat, and to know what kind of plants, it's not just going to like the pet food store. You have to learn about how to identify trees and where to find the trees, so you have a constant supply of plant material to feed your animals. So really impressive that was his passion. He was involved with the society and also with the Maryland Entomological Society. And when he passed away, he donated over 10,000 specimens to Natural History Society. Since I have an in with the insect curator, he's shared that, what's really special about the Bryant, one of the things that's special about the Bryant collection is that the remarkable variation in wing pattern within species, kind of like the tree snails, where it's just the diversity. It's really, again, back to preserving biodiversity. Harold Levy is another example where I'm pretty sure this minerals was a hobby for him. He wasn't a professional, but with his story, again with snakes, I guess this is the generations of people that went out searching for snakes. Went to Pimlico looking for snakes, but he found a rock. But the rock in it had a very special, had a tourmaline crystal, and it was really unique. And that became part of the society's collection. Whether Harold was interested in minerals before then, I don't know, but he kept up that interest. He became the mineral curator. He became a member of the Baltimore Mineral Society. And thankfully, before he passed away, this is a picture of him in our Overly headquarters holding the mineral he found many decades before. And you can see the joy that brings to him. I just want to share this excerpt from a memorial I found about Harold, because I think it speaks to his expertise particularly, but I think it also probably could be said of a lot of our members in terms of their knowledge. So it says, Harold could be considered the patriarch of Maryland mineral collectors, not only by virtue of his age, but by the breadth of his experience. I think the society is all about people, sharing, having a common interest in whatever aspect of natural history that speaks to them. It's that common interest, but it's not like siloed off. People really care and they want to share these fun facts that they know. So I think that's really a beautiful trait of the Natural History Society. The last collector I want to emphasize is Romeo Mansuetti. So he was the person I mentioned with that laboratory before. There's all these really cool things in the newspaper archive. So, how do I compete with this headline? Artist, author, herpetologist, and before long, he'll be 23. Clearly a really, did a lot of things, was really interested in nature. It speaks volumes. In the 1940s, he served in World War II. He spent time in a German prison camp. And then in the late 40s, he came back and taught at the summer camp for the Natural History Society. He learned about nature and he gave back as a teacher. He would become a prominent researcher in Maryland fisheries and kind of the growing field at that time of the ecology of the Chesapeake Bay. And then this is all still, he unfortunately passed away when he was 40 years old. He's very accomplished, did a lot of things. So, it's really exciting to think about what his collection looked like. And the thing is, we don't know, at least certain parts of his collection, we don't know because his historic fish collection was thrown away. It was declined by the Smithsonian. There was interest in the Calvert Marine Museum, but ultimately thrown away by the University of Maryland in the 1970s. So here's your second breadcrumb. On the back of my piece of paper, although it's spelled wrong, which makes me question, but it says R. Mansuetti on the back of that piece of paper. That I always bring around with me. So this is all to say that's not just a one-time story. This is a story that repeats itself over and over again. There's these really important collections that get thrown away, or they get divvied up or somehow compromised. And because Maryland does not have a statewide, there's no official state natural history museum, which would be traditionally where all these important parts of our history are stored. So that's a real big lack. And there's, several other states that share this fate, but, this is something that you've heard time and again, that the Natural History Society is trying to make, to fill that void of, we want a statewide natural history museum. Again, it's not for a lack of trying. This is a really cool, I believe it's in the lobby of the museum. So this 1938 museum never existed. It looks really cool. There was a proposed, there at some point people sketched up what a natural history museum could look like in Baltimore. It's affiliated with the Natural History Society, but this is 1938. Lots of things were going on. It never came to be. But we're still here. Again, we're almost at 100 years old. And it's just really exciting. We've always had a headquarters, but with each year as we're growing, we grow, our capacity with staff and our volunteer curators who dedicate a lot of time to make us, jump through all the hoops to become an official museum. It's really paying off. There's these really exciting exhibits. Again, the woolly mammoth is leaving in a couple of months, so please come visit. This is just a great way to learn about Maryland's history. Again, if this is kind of like, what we've been doing for almost a century. We still offer a variety of nature-themed field trips, workshops, art classes, all these things to get people, whatever your interest is, get you connected to other people who share that, mutual interest. A shout out to all the clubs. I think that's still a great part of the society. So the Archaeology Club, the Herpetology Club, Fossils, LEP. LEP refers to Lepidoptera, which is butterflies and moths. So there's even within the society, there's these smaller groups that are really built around geeking out about this topic that's really special to you. And what's really special to me is that I'm sharing all this because I'm holding myself accountable to go ahead and write a book. I really want, as Bronwyn alluded to, when we had our 85th anniversary, I was working on the newsletters at that time, and I compiled the 85 facts about Natural History Society. And there's just so much. It's such a rich history. The society has a rich history. There's wonderful people. There's really amazing adventure stories that are part of our history. And also there's, just talking about the value of Natural History Museum. There's lots to write about. I just have to get focused. But I hope that by 2029, we'll have a book that celebrates everything about the Natural History Society. And I will end with the final breadcrumb about this. So this piece of paper is, again, it's this paper shouldn't be in my hands, but in 2015, when I was helping organize the book sale for the society, I had very fortunate to work with lots of amazing volunteers, and we were sorting magazines and books left and right. And when I could, I would just, there would be random things that, were like, oh, this might be important. I'd put it on the side. And I remember Charlie saying that Mansuetti was, I remember the name. So it's like, oh, this might be important. So I put it on the side. And about 6 months after the book sales, when I started my job with the Gunpowder Valley Conservancy, which is a local nonprofit, and obviously, based on the name, is very concerned with preserving the Gunpowder River, its tributaries, all the area around there. And so when I realized that this piece of paper that it's related to the society, however, maybe it's related to Mansuetti, I don't know, but it's a label, and it's from someone taking a field trip in July of 1937 to the Gunpowder River, and I'm presumably looking for a fish or just checking out the rocks in the water. And so for me, that stays behind my desk, behind my computer, to remind me how natural history collections foster connections over space and time. And so it's just really nice to have that shared experience where, again, it's just the mutual interest in the natural history of the area and how it can bring people together. And yeah, I think that's it. That's the Natural History Society of Maryland in a nutshell.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Amy. That was wonderful. Let me put a spotlight on you.
No, please don't.
Okay. We have a spotlight now. And we'll open it up for any questions or comments. You can use the raise hand icon or just raise your hand and I'll try to look at it. And or you can put a question in the chat box. So do we have any questions for Amy right now? Don't be shy. Oh, here we go. Kathy has put in there, any idea where to start to find someone who knows about early Native American history in the Perry Hall area?
Oh, cool.
I know
I know
that's
it's the 250th anniversary, but I don't know personally, but I am interested in learning that too.
Because this team that's like going to be putting a talk together and markers together and everything, the only thing they can come up with is the reason why the river's named that way is the natives planted the gunpowder. And I'm sorry, I can't believe that that was the case. I mean, I think that's one of those legends that we just have to stop perpetuating. So I figured there might be somebody on the call that might know.
Kathy, I can share that question with the archaeology club, and that might shake something loose.
Thank you, Matthew.
Remind me later.
Great, great.
And
Sure.
Kathy, I did ask our curator about that historic sign, and she doesn't believe that either. So
Good.
Let's figure it out. I'm really interested too.
Because there really is a marker that says this. I mean, but part of our next year's for the whole country, everybody's re-looking at these markers and figuring out that there's a lot of them that are just wrong. And so part of anything that's related to natural history, we should be trying to write that history. Thank you. Great job though, Amy.
I have a question for you, Amy. What is, maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but what's your plan for the book? How are you tackling this? And is there any way that that you're looking for help in some form or fashion? How can we help?
Yeah, it was great. I tend to write I kind of exist in chaos, and I like to take all the information in, kind of, move it around and see what comes up. And so right now I've just been focusing on the newspaper archives and then going through the old bulletins and kind of picking out names and finding some patterns. I've really only just started it this past summer. Having the talk in September at Evergreen was kind of like, oh, I can kind of put an initial start, but I will say I want it to be not just a dry, like this happened, then this happened. I want to kind of document the things that happen, but also the people. And I certainly would like to have contemporary naturalists in it as well. So this is a work in progress. So I'm happy if people have ideas, please. I'm sure Bronwyn can help connect us and we can figure out how to have, I want it to reflect the society and what it was and what it is and what it will be.
I saw that we have Dave Pittenger on the call here, and Dave is on our board of directors at this point. Dave, did you want to give an update on the current bills that are working their way through?
Sure. Thanks, Amy. That was a great presentation. I love the snippets and the personalities from the past and the present. Anyway, so I think many people know that we have been planning a renovation of the building. We have divided actually in three parts. One is just the exterior of the building. That's going to be starting this spring. And should be done by summer, but could be fall. And the place will look different, but inside will be about the same. Will be the same. We'll be working on exhibits as we had in the past, and then we are, and the reason I connect this with the bills are we have a second half of this first phase, which will be the interior of the current footprint. And we've got some great plans there. It'll be similar to what we have now, but the layout and everything will make a lot more sense. And then beyond that, we have, and we're hoping to get that done by the time Amy's book is done for the 29 for the, is it the bicentennial? I don't know what it is. The 100th year anniversary, centennial. And we're connecting that to bills because it's in order to get the kind of money that we'll need in the second phase of probably be about $3 million. We've had a nice contribution from the county, $1.5 million, and a little over $1 million from the state. We have our local delegation's very supportive. And it's very interesting because, as everybody knows, our county executive has gone off to be a congressperson. And so we're going to be working with him on perhaps some federal earmarking. We could never get on Dutch Rupersberger's radar screen, but Johnny Oshevsky is, and I think many of you know his wife is a naturalist and has worked for the Conservancy in Howard County, and Charlie and some other people knew her, and she brought the executive over. Anyway, he's going off to Congress, so we're hoping he may be able to help us with some federal funding, which, despite all the cutbacks and everything going on in budgets, there are agencies and nonprofits that are getting funding. And we are working very hard to get on the governor's radar screen here in Maryland, because the governor is very powerful in terms of controlling the purse strings. Anyway, our local delegation has introduced, Nick Allen, who's one of our delegates, has introduced a bill this year, which he did again last year, to have us named the official Natural History Museum of Maryland. We spoke this week with, because our senator, Kathy Klausmeyer, has, I think everybody knows, gone over to be the county executive. And she has been a very big supporter of ours over the years. And really, she was responsible for getting us the $500,000 from the state. Well, we are wondering who our new senator is going to be. It's probably one of our current delegates. Anyway, before she left, she co-sponsored that bill to have us named the official Natural History Museum in Maryland. And we talked this week to a Senator, Mary Washington, who is considering stepping in to sponsor the bill and take it over from Senator, now County Executive Klausmeyer. And she has some very big ideas on things we could do. I had to take a quick nap after our conversation. She was so energetic. So she wants to go way beyond just the naming and get us some money. And so we're forging ahead. We will be letting the membership know when this settles down how you can help, because if you live in Maryland, you have delegates and a senator who we would hope would support whatever happens in Annapolis. So it's kind of a changing scene, and we're trying to make that happen this year.
Thanks, Dave. That's another chapter for you, Amy. So for the book.
Exciting chapter 2.
It is a very exciting chapter. Ken, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, Amy, I really enjoyed the presentation. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've come to have a real respect for history. It does so many things for us. It gives us a foundation to work from. And I'm very curious about that schism, that fight is, you know, when there was a split between what became the Maryland Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Society, I'm very interested in that. If there are any writings on that, I suspect they would be interesting. But also, I want to say that I feel like we're there again, just in terms of the society in general. I think we're mesmerized by technology. And I think part of our soul is kind of dripping away. That is the soul that tells us to be connected to nature. So I feel like this fight is kind of renewing itself, and I'd love to know more about it. So if you have anything, just let me know.
I do know. So when I was putting together the 85 facts, I will go back to the source material again. I'm pretty sure in the society's board minutes from that I think that there is some documentation, and I don't want to, because I don't want to quote it because it's been a while, but I think it was very colorful. How things played out as they separated. And the second part of your statement, I agree with you too. I think it's because, I mean, technology is shiny, and I think it's easy to overlook nature because it's in the, in some sense it's in the background, it's basic, but it doesn't make it less worthy. My quick example I tell people is when I have a master's degree. I'm a botanist, but my master's degree is in plant biology. It was the botany department when I first started, but then it became plant biology. So it was both ecology and microbiology and genetics and all the things. So yeah, that's an unfortunate trend that, I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's also master naturalists popping up all over the country. So I think all is not lost for the natural world, but it's hard to compete with the shiny things.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a crusader, though.
I'm up for the challenge.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Which something that I've learned recently is the new terminology the kids are using, the Gen Z kids,
Yeah.
now Gen Alpha, whatever, coming up, Gen Alpha and Gen Z. When they need to take a brain break from the screen, the term is, you got to go touch grass. That's a new thing that the kids are saying. I've got to go touch grass. Go touch grass. Go take a break. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is.
Do we have any other questions or comments from Amy? I mean, not for Amy. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for sharing this with us. It's always good to take time and to honor the past. And that's what, for me, who's worked in environmental education and nature education for a long time, it's the history of this organization, and the people and the history that makes me want to be a part of its future. It's just a fascinating group, and it's my honor and privilege to kind of take that baton from all the people that you've talked about and continue the great works and hopefully move forward into the next chapter. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening for Must Learn Thursday. I hope I'll see y'all in February for snail eating flies. That'll be great. And yes, this will be available on our YouTube channel. If you want to share it as well, it's a way that you can see the past recordings. It's a wonderful asset for us. Make sure that you subscribe. It's Maryland Nature at YouTube. So stay well, stay curious, stay outside, stay warm, and we'll see you soon, either at the museum or online. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Have a great night.